Welcome back to Living Indie Grind. This episode I'm talking with Skeffles. He made his own game engine and made a game, Project Torrim, on that engine. If you like what you hear today, don't forget to like and subscribe, join the Discord, and wishlist Stolen Hearts on Steam. Let's get into it.
This is not a podcast, this is a theme song.
How do you do? It's Mr. Moo, and this is Living Indie Grind. And today I have Lewis of Skeffles fame. Welcome. Hot start. You wanna give yourself a little intro?
Yeah, so I'm Skeffles, indie dev. Like, I want to say everyone on YouTube, but I guess I'm just watching all the indie devs. I've done a tower defense game and just a bunch of game jams recently. I'm planning on a new big game soon, but I haven't started, so I'm hoping to get that started soon.
Nice. And I know the project that you were working on for a while was Project Torrim. So do you want to kind of talk about that?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so that was meant to be a fairly short project. It was meant to, I think I started it end of April when it was meant to go until September. And then it turned out to be a whole 12 months because just, you lose scope of what you're doing. But I think it turned out to be pretty good in the end. I don't know whether you gave it a go.
I never downloaded it, but I was following. I know, sinful. But it's been on my list. But I was following it while you were making the devlogs for a while, and it was a pretty unique game dev experience, I would say, right? Because you didn't just hop into Unity and say, I'm going to make a tower defense game. You went something even more ambitious, right? You want to talk about what you were trying to do?
Oh yeah, so I'm doing it all in my own game engine using Monogame, which has been super fun. Like, loads of people are in Unity and they're having a great time. I'm having my own little good fun time using Monogame and making my own engine, and I'm hoping the engine's rubbish right now, but I'm hoping that one day it could be kind of decent.
So why did you decide that you want to make your own game engine versus use like Unity, right? Which obviously would have been an easier experience for you.
Well, I have used Unity in the past. I actually had a video on it. So I've used it for Global Game Jam 2015 and 2016. So over 5 years ago was maybe the last time I used it. I did try and do something when I was at uni a few years ago, but I think what ended up with that project was that I just scrapped the Unity part and I just animated it. So it was just an animation as opposed to a fully fledged interactive thing. But yeah, the thing that drew me to that, honestly, is like, so if you ever use Game Maker?
I'm sorry, Game Maker, you said?
Oh.
Sorry, you just cut out for a second.
Yeah, have you?
No.
Yeah, my internet's crap.
No, I've only used Unity. I've been thinking about branching off, but I probably would go something like Unreal next, right? Like that's kind of a step up from Unity if you're trying to do like, big networking games or super intense graphic. But I've never thought to create my own engine. That kind of sounds like a little bit of a nightmare, unless you're like super into getting down to the base code of everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like one thing that, so to bring it to the Game Maker. So back in 2012, I was using Game Maker and I started doing 3D projects with it. And I was like, I need animation. I had no idea how to do 3D animation with Game Maker. So what I ended up doing was just making my own 3D animation tool. And I loved doing that. And I sort of made me think I want to do more tools and more of the frameworks behind what you're playing. So that's sort of what's led me to doing my engine.
Nice. And so were you also developing this engine during Project Torrim, or was it like you were creating features for the engine so that you can create Project Torrim, right? So it was a kind of like this joint effort that you were doing, right? It wasn't just making the game, it was also making the engine.
Yeah, exactly. Like, every time I need something, I would add it to the engine first, because what's the point in creating an engine that you're not going to have a game with? And that was one of the reasons. I think so. My first devlog, I said something along those lines, like I'm making a game for each major feature I do in the engine. Oh, whoops!
My mic just popped straight out of the socket, but we're okay. Oh, 2 in a row.
Oh dear, that's gone again.
All right. Hopefully you'll hear me from down here. I think we're okay. Sorry, go ahead.
The whole audio quality is completely changed in the video now.
I'll have to spruce it up.
I mean, how much do you edit them? I remember watching the Torrim one, and you were like, "Oh, I thought I was going to edit this, but I didn't really."
No, I none of them have ever been cut. Like I've just been flashing between the two faces, which is probably exactly what I'm going to be doing for this one as well. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I noticed that. All right. What was I saying? Something about game engines.
Yeah.
Making features along with game engine. Yeah. So so I tried to make for each feature I've tried to add. I've tried to make a game, but with Project Torrim, I had quite a lot of new features. So I began a level editor. I added particle systems. A lot of the original stuff I was doing for Project Torrim initially was to do pathfinding. So I've got an agent that goes to a point, but I don't actually have like A star or Dijkstra's or any of those algorithms for actually doing pathfinding. So I'm hoping to implement that in my next big project. So there's a hint for what I'm making next.
Have you any more hints you want to share?
I mean, I have openly discussed it on some of my older streams. So, I mean, if you want to hear more or you just want hints.
Well, let's give us the whole scoop.
Okay, so the scoop. Okay, I've got some scoop here. This will be interesting. So, games like Theme Hospital and games like games like Roller Coaster Tycoon, I love.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, right. So, like, I love the isometric art of those games. And have you seen what BW Dev's making? Lumber Mill.
Yes, I have, but yeah, I kind of forget it was a while ago because that game's been in the works for a while now, right?
Yeah, it's been a couple of years, I think. I think he's on like the 4th iteration of it. I've been following it for maybe just over a year now. I like that. The art style of that, I think that was also inspired by Theme Hospital and Roller Coaster Tycoon. Nice. So I want to take like an isometric game and do like a management simulator thing. I'm thinking about putting it in museums. So you like manage a museum. Could be fun. Could be fun.
Did you play a lot of those games as a kid? Because that's what I remember. Like Roller Coaster Tycoon. I remember playing on my parents' old. I don't even know what version of Windows that was, but yeah, those were fun.
I think we had Windows 98 back then. Because we got I remember our first computer came around the year 2000. Yeah.
Nice. And is that where you draw like a lot of?
Did you get your computer around then?
Yeah. Around. I mean, I was probably just old enough around that time to start using the computer, but it was also conveniently when we probably got a computer around that time. Played a lot. I couldn't even tell you the names of the games we played besides like, Sims and Roller Coaster Tycoon, and I'm trying to think of some of the other big ones, but it was like on those old, something like that. You have a whole stack of those. How often do you pop those in?
These are my games that inspire me. So I've got Sims, Roller Coaster Tycoon, Theme Hospital. This is Sims Making Magic, which I think might have had a different name in America. I don't know. Sim Superstar. I couldn't get the Sims really to properly work, and then Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. I've got just a bunch of older games in the other room as well.
And do you play those games even today?
I have been. There's some old Roller Coaster Tycoon videos on my channel from like 6 years ago. But I last time I played them was probably when I streamed them like in February, March time.
Nice. So do you play also games that were made in the past 15 years or just those old ones?
To be honest, I end up playing quite a lot of older games. I started a new job recently, and I met my new colleagues, and they were like, "Oh, do you play games?" And I was like, "Yeah, I played a new one fairly recently. What was it called? The Witcher 1." And I realized that was at least 10 years old.
That's funny, but I think if I try to put one of those games in my computer, it would say this is completely incompatible. You have to go into a pawn shop and find a computer that will run this thing.
Yeah, so that's the problem I had in February and March when I did some streaming. So with The Sims, I could only get it to run if I went to Windows 7 and I had to remove a security update.
always a good sign that you should be running that program.
Yeah, and none of the expansion packs worked. It was just like the vanilla version of the game. And for Theme Hospital, I couldn't get it to work on either Windows 7 or Windows 10, so I just bought it on Origin. It was only like £4, £5.
Nice. Wow. So I see that this is usually it's like towards the end of my conversation where I find where people get their inspiration from, but you have it right on your desk. You got a tall stack of these old PC games. Did you always play PC games, or did you ever play any of the console games or anything like that?
I've never had apart from a Nintendo Wii, I'm now a Switch. I've never had a console. I've never had an Xbox or a PlayStation myself. I go to my friends' houses and we play I remember playing GTA 4 and the Call of Duty games. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm kind of only play games on PC, and that's mostly because most games exist for the PC as well as console. So I don't, and also most now crossplay is super popular. So if I want to play with my friends on console, it's easy. But I still use a remote. I don't. I use a controller, so I don't use the mouse and keyboard for most of the games. Especially if it requires a lot of coordination, I don't have that type of mouse and keyboard skills. But yeah, when I was a kid, I was growing up with Nintendo. Nintendo is probably my biggest inspiration. I think the GameCube is the perfect system. Or it was the first system that it wasn't technologically limited and could make a lot of really fun and original games, I found. So that's where I get a lot of the inspiration for the games that I like to make, because I also really like local multiplayer and things like that. So I grew up with a bunch of siblings, so we were always
I got into
local multiplayer stuff.
Yeah, local multiplayer stuff's great. I got into some of that with some colleagues just before lockdown. So when lockdown came in 2020, it was just oh no, can't play those games.
Yeah, that's really rough. But that it motivated me to make local multiplayer games, right? So now I have this big project, right, that I've been working on, and Stolen Hearts wishlist on Steam, and I wanted to do
it now, guys.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll pause the video. We'll wait. No, but I find myself adding this local multiplayer, multiple games. That is it's just expanding the size of the project for no reason, but except for the fact that I love local multiplayer, and I can't resist but put it in, especially after making all these mechanics. So definitely I find a lot of that inspiration from those my early years.
So what local multiplayer games do you rate?
I'm sorry, do I what?
Do you rate what local multiplayer games do you like?
Yeah,
enjoy, recommend.
So one of actually kind of the cornerstone of Stolen Hearts is the base mechanic was inspired by a game called Towerfall Ascension. And it's you shoot a bunch of arrows. Oh, you played?
I played.
Yeah, that was so addictive, so easy to pick up, and it's one of my favorite games to play. Obviously it came out when I was already an adult when I picked it up. I was in college, so. But it became a real staple in my group of friends. So That's definitely one of my favorites. But then Nintendo has so many games. Super Monkey Ball was one that when I was a kid I used to love to play that game. Yeah, so games like that. But yeah, not too complicated with the mechanics. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I did some Towerfall Ascension fairly recently. A friend came around, and we also played Overcooked. If you played that,
yes, that's another great one. All right, we got to get back to game dev. Otherwise, we'll be talking about the games that we love for forever. No, don't worry.
Yeah, do we want to do a game podcast instead?
Yeah, we should. I'll start another one.
Game dev.
Yeah. Cool. So now you're starting this. Do you have a name for your new project coming up?
I'm thinking something along the lines of museum curator or curator tycoon. I don't know if the tycoon is like copyrighted or anything. There's a few tycoon games out there, so I don't think it is.
Mm-hmm. Now this seems you're going to make this again, right, with your own game engine, and Project Torrim took you about a year, right? And from just knowing what a tower defense game is, and then also knowing what Roller Coaster Tycoon is, right? Those are pretty massively different in scope. So how long do you expect that you'll be working on this new game?
I've been thinking about this recently. You know what? I think I want to try and get a prototype out within a year, like a working, like a demo level. I know that whenever I say it's going to be a year, it's going to be at least 2.
Yeah.
But one thing I'm super keen on doing, I kind of wish I did with Project Torrim, was is to release, whenever I do a devlog, I want to have a build go out on itch so people can download it and see, does it work? Are there any usability issues with it? Just get a feel for what people think of how it plays. Because I'm not entirely sure how a museum simulator would necessarily be any good. Like, where's the fun in that? Maybe it's naturally fun, or maybe I'll have to add some more interactive elements to it.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes, like, when you have a base idea of a game, right, you're kind of visualizing what it's generally going to be like. But it's also impossible to actually predict what parts will be fun and what parts, like, won't be fun, right? Any game I've ever made, like, I end up creating something different than what I thought I was going to make. Because, like, along the way, I was like, oh, this element of the game is the most fun part of it. And I'm just going to capitalize on that. And I forget what I thought before. So I can easily see this with, your game, is that, like, you're going to find something that is the golden ticket for it. And then you can, develop it from there.
I think that's going to be one of the benefits of releasing it on, say it's a monthly basis. Maybe one month there's something really fun, and I can just say, the game's going to have a lot more of that in it. But it kind of just depends how the game comes along, because a lot of what's in my head right now is it's kind of just like a simulator. It's not a game that you interact with. So I just need to build that out and see how I can make it into a game.
Yeah. But, it's pretty interesting because a lot of people, pretty much everyone that I've talked to so far, right, they create games so that they can release them on Steam, maybe make some money on it so that they can continue to make more games and then possibly, go full-time with it. Or some people just really like to make games, with game jams and stuff like that. But you're kind of doing something interesting, right, which is like, you've just released Project Torrim, right? And that took you a year. So that's a big project, right? That's not just like a game jam. Oh, it's a quick one-off. It's a fun to make games for a weekend, and then you continue with the next project, right? You spent a lot of time invested in making Project Torrim, then released it, but it's free, right? It's free and it's on itch, and now you're saying, oh, I'm going to create this other game that is going to be also on itch, and it's going to be a year just to get the prototype, and you're going to keep on developing it, and and without any thoughts of pushing it to Steam or anything like that.
I wouldn't quite say that's true.
No?
I would like this next game to go on Steam.
Okay.
But I think getting like a demo level to see, is it fun? Are people interested? And it as a concept,
Gotcha.
would be great. And then I could develop it further. So say I've got one level as my demo. And then the second year I work on the game, I develop 5 levels. And kind of like the scenarios in the original Roller Coaster Tycoon, you'd have a different museum. And I could always try and make sure I don't give too much away in the prototypes that I release on itch. Because obviously you don't want to release the entire game, have everyone just play it and go, well, I don't want to buy the Steam version because I've already played it. There's no point.
Right.
You want to make sure there's still value in that Steam release.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's. Yeah, I mean, so let's say you create this demo and you generate a lot of interest for it, and now you're like, okay, I'm gonna. If you wanted to, make it super high quality in a reduced amount of time, right? It would obviously be easier to use an existing one of these big game engines. Would you consider switching after that point? So you're like, okay, I want to spend more, because otherwise you're going to spend a lot more time in developing the engine. Or is it still like, this is just something I'm personally invested in, and this is my own personal achievement, and because I mean that's very respectable to to do, right? Like, not many people do things just for the sake of wanting to do them.
I think there's elements of both. Yeah, like I want to work on my engine. I have had people say on my videos like, "Hey, are you going to use Unity soon? Are you going to be switching?" I think someone this was either about Unity or 3D, but someone definitely said to me, "Are you going to upgrade soon?" I was like, "Excuse me,
this is the upgrade,
baby." Yeah, I have used pretty much all the other game engines, and they are super easy to get into, but I'm just enjoying what I'm doing. I feel like I've tailed off here, and there was another relevant point I had. Damn it! But yeah, if I had to switch to, if I had a prototype, I said this is pretty fun, but I don't think I'll be able to do it on my own engine. But if I did it in Unity, it could be faster and done. Maybe I'd consider it. Yeah. But ideally, I'd do it with my own engine.
Yeah, and that would be really cool. I think a lot of people, you probably get a lot of comments saying like, that they admire your ability to make your own engine.
Yeah, that could happen on the YouTube videos, but as soon as the game's out, no one actually cares if it's made in Unity, if it's made in a custom engine. No one cares because they want to play the game. They want to have fun in that game and that world you've created, which is kind of another reason why I do like to make a game every so often with the engine.
Right. So it sounds like you've been obviously doing this for a long time. So when did you really get into it? I mean, you were talking about all the way in 2012, you were saying Game Maker, right? Or was that when you were doing Unity for the first time?
Yeah, so my earliest games were sort of 2009 with Game Maker 7. So it's been a while. When did you get into it?
I probably got into it around 2015 or so. So it's been like 6 years, but it's been the past 3 years that has been a much more like diving in, because I was in school, I was in college back then, and I was studying computer science, so it was all tangential at that point, and I was just like, oh, this would be fun to do. Started a project, made like something in Python, like native Python, and I was like, oh, this is fun.
Do you ever use Pygame?
No, I haven't. Actually, someone was just talking about Pygame in my Discord. Join the Discord. Speaking of the Discord, there's Charcoal, friend of the channel, wanted us to talk about bugs and how annoying they are and the best way to solve them. And I thought this would also be great to get your take, because you're also a software engineer.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of software engineers that it seems like in the community. So what is your take on the best way to deal with annoying bugs?
Right. So when it comes to bugs, there's a lot of places you could find them. When it comes to games and software, I find that they're very different. But often, I just find myself in the debugger window in Visual Studio, going through, looking at all the variables, what's their state, and stepping through everything. Do you find yourself in similar scenarios?
Yeah, I think, I pride myself on bug finding, and I think that at this point I've gotten quite good at just being able to diagnose a problem. And advice for someone that may not have a lot of experience with code is to, one, make sure you're running your code regularly, right? You don't want to try to write everything and then press play and then hope that it works, right? Because then it's going to be a lot harder to find your bugs. So make it incrementally. Make sure that your stuff runs, and then also just kind of like what you said, right? It's being able to read errors, right, in the debug log, right? And that just goes for writing code in general for software development. I mean that's my take. And just practice with code.
Yeah, if you get an error thrown up, it will usually have a stack trace if you're in debug mode. And I think this applies to all engines really, Unity, Unreal, my own engine, or any bit of software. You'll have your stack trace, and it will say like what file there's a problem in. So just put some breakpoints in there, or if you can't breakpoint it for some reason, just put some logging in there, and you can see, okay, it got to this point, and you can take a peek at what values things are. But something I have recently come across, I probably should have come across it a little bit sooner because it's always been on my peripheral. I don't know how much you end up using it because you're a software engineer as well. So I didn't really do it much at my last place, but at my new place, I'm doing a lot of, I'm starting to do TDD, test-driven development, where I got a lot of unit tests and actually I'm considering adding them to my game engine, because knowing that everything runs smoothly without having to manually test it would be so nice.
Yeah, I've currently my game 0 tests, and I feel like I'm building a house of cards. That is ready to tumble right at like the weakest point very soon, because like the scope of my project is so large. And the fact that there are 0 tests, and there's like code that wrote like 2 years ago that I just have not even looked at, right? That if I were to go back and I'm like, oh, I should just change this, might affect any number of things. So like unit tests, integration tests, all would be great. But knowing myself, not gonna do it. But but that would be. I'm not even. To be honest, I don't even know how. I'm sure it exists, but how Unity actually has like a testing framework. Never used it, but
yeah,
sure
I think there is one for Unity. Do you use unit tests in your day job?
Oh yeah, I think my team and my boss would be very very upset if I was not writing tests. Yeah, definitely a requirement of like submitting pretty much any code. That like anytime I change code or anytime I write new functions or obviously like new files is to write unit tests at the very least. Integration tests, not as frequent. Depends on what it is, but yeah, it definitely in a professional environment, I've always had to write unit tests. I've never seen a situation where anyone had ever let me go by without writing those.
Oh, my last place, they only just started adding them when I left, which was a shame because I would have liked to see what it was like. But I'm trying it at my new place, and it seems good so far.
Nice, yeah.
I think with games, you end up doing more like full integration tests.
Yeah, and especially with
units.
Yeah, for sure. Because one, a lot of the tests are also very, especially for like mechanics, right? You need to feel it out, and it's like, okay, obviously there are things that like, there's a difference between the eye test or the mechanical feel test, and then also testing that a certain function returns a thing that it's supposed to return, right? So that's an obvious difference. But even so, right? it's pretty difficult, right? Because you have when you're writing code for some application, right, or some product, and it's like all connected, right, and you're writing the code that is connecting it all, right? It's much easier to write integration tests or write unit tests in that situation rather than Unity, which is like, oh, okay, maybe you can write unit tests for this particular component that the particular file, but how it interacts with other files, like it's very situational, right? Like this object needs to be standing on this object and trigger the trigger and collide with this, and gravity needs to be 1 and all that, and that's like very situational, and I don't know really how to mimic that.
I think I've seen a few things, and it's either GMTK or AI in Games, the YouTube channels. I think definitely with AI in Games, I saw some tests they had for Sea of Thieves. This YouTube channel's got some fantastic Sea of Thieves videos, and it goes into the AI and about how they made it. And there's some really cool stuff about how they tested it, and it shows like the setup of the test world and how you see the AI going up to a player and then attacking. And I think that was all automated.
That's pretty cool. And I imagine if you're trying to do something like technologically complex, like machine learning or any sort of AI, right, where it's like it's quite a complex algorithm, then you're going to be confusing yourself if you don't write tests and and good documentation and comments and things like that, right? Or at least some way to explain what's going on. Whereas like, I don't find at work, I find myself having to do a lot of like code surgery, right? Go into the application, cut this open, maybe tweak it, and then like, sew it back up, or like move major components around, right? Or just go for the amputation.
Yeah.
But for Unity, it's like, oh, you don't like this component? Just add another one and write the one you want. And then it's also, I haven't really reinvented the wheel too many times. Nothing that was really required significant complex logic. So just like, moving components around and saying if this interacts with this, then display this thing or things like that. So it becomes much more, standard.
I think that's something with Unity. It's you've got a lot of standardization across the whole thing, and it's over engines like Unreal. There's a lot of standardization there. You don't really have to worry too much about it unless you are creating something more complex, which I've never really gone in and used the C++ with Unreal. But yeah, blueprints are good though.
Do you have blueprints for your engine? Do you have like designs? Like, do you really consider your designs when you're adding features to the engine?
Sometimes I have, and sometimes I haven't, and it's a bit of a mishmash at the moment. And I need to work it out. I need to say this is in or this is out, and I think I'm starting to consider that. Like, this weekend it's GMTK Game Jam. Are you going to be participating?
I will not be. I know a lot of people are, but I'm not going to be around for that, unfortunately.
Okay, so I'm going to be doing it, and my buddy Ed is joining me, and I've just gotten access to the code, and he's like, part of him is like, oh, that's really nice, and the other parts he's like, why did you do it this way?
That's fun. Do you have other people using your engine, or are you the only person that's ever made? Is it okay? Let me ask you this: is it even publicly available?
No. So my flatmate has seen some things, and then this weekend my friends starting to see it. So this is the first time someone's actually going to do something with it that's not me. Part of me would love to have it publicly available one day. It's just not ready in any way, shape, or form for that.
Maybe after the museum game.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of using. I don't want to say this too early, but let's go for it anyway. I'm using this weekend with Ed playing with the engine to see if someone could actually use the engine and then maybe in the future I will invite a few devs and see what they can make. Like,
That would be fun. That would put me on the list.
yeah, okay.
I'm very interested to see it, especially since I've never seen like a real an engine that has been created by like another individual. Briefly had a stint with Pygame. Like I've seen it, but I haven't actually really used it. So I would definitely be very interested to see what that's like, because I've only really seen Unity, as I said.
Yeah, but I think I'm gonna have to make a lot of changes to it before I even consider properly doing that, and so it's gonna be very different by the time anyone gets their hands on it.
Nice. So your YouTube channel, you've been. It sounds like you've been around YouTube for a long time. But have you been and you've been also doing game dev for a long time. Have you been making game dev content for all this time? I mean, you were talking earlier about how you were just making PC game, just like streams, and you were posting those, and or at least you were doing some streaming, but then you were also posting just, I guess, gameplay content.
Yeah, so I guess a rundown of my YouTube history was back in 2007. My first video was a Lego animation, and I did a couple of those for a couple of years. And then I did some RuneScape videos. RuneScape music videos were like a big thing back in the day, so I made a couple of those. And back then, so we're talking about around 2010, I sort of uploaded whatever I wanted, and there wasn't much in the way of structure to the channel or anything. It was just, if I wanted to put a video out, I just do that. And I've got, I think most of them now, possibly all of them, are private or hidden. I was tempted to make a playlist with them, but I can't see any point to doing that. Then I did a huge series on old school RuneScape updates, some Rollercoaster Tycoon Let's Plays, and then now my game dev stuff.
And so you have about what, like 450 subscribers, something like that?
Yeah.
Have those been people that were following you from back then and then are now watching your game dev stuff, or is it just a kind of a new batch of people?
I don't think anyone that subscribed to me before 2020 watches my videos now. So out of the 450 odd subscribers, I think maybe only 200 are sort of new. If I look in the last 365 days, it says I got 205 new subs. So there's probably like 200 before, but they're probably inactive accounts. But I distinctly remember when I started posting game dev content, I did lose a bunch of subscribers. I guess there were people that wanted to watch RuneScape videos.
It's YouTube is a tricky operation, right? Especially like in your channel, like the people that watch you are expecting certain things, right? If I started, I don't know, they start making music on this channel, I think that I would be starting basically from zero again. Not that
some people do it.
Yeah, you need to have a very transferable type of content, right? Like Ponty Pants right now, he obviously had a hot start when he started posting stuff about his boxing game, but now he just posts whatever he wants. It's all kind of related, which I feel like it needs to be, but he's definitely enough of a personality that people just watch him for him.
I do wonder with Ponty Pants whether he started with devlogs as a way to become a YouTuber, or whether he was doing it to support his game. Because there's some people that do just take whatever they're originally making videos on, say devlogs, and then they just use it to become like a standard YouTuber. I say standard in the loosest terms. And then there's some people that are there to just show off their games and become a game dev. I assume that's why yourself, you were on there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the people that, you and I were all in this very similar Discords and communities. We follow the same people kind of watch us. So and most of the people that we're around, I would say, fill into the category of I'm making a game, and this YouTube content, while it's definitely fun, right? It's fun in its own way, and it's satisfying in its own way. But that content is to promote my career as an indie game dev, right? So that you can continue making games and people will be interested in your games. But yeah, kind of like what you said, right? Where there's like this other avenue, which is just to, game dev is kind of a platform that is used to, just become a YouTuber, and that's kind of the primary focus of those people.
Yeah, I see that in quite a lot of channels, and but part of me does think like, oh, maybe I could just try and get more views on a video, because you do put in a certain amount of effort to each of your videos you make.
Oh yeah, and videos, there's so much effort, right? Like if you took the time that I was using for game dev and I put it to YouTube videos, I'd have significantly better YouTube videos. But if and probably then more subscribers, more views, and a more successful channel, and then I could go back to my game, and then people will be more interested. But obviously it would cost me the time that I'd be spending on my game, right? Whereas like if I removed my YouTube time, I'd be cruising through my game much faster. But it's a balance that you want to, for me, like it's like only me that really cares about my game. So it's like I have to reach out to people to be like, hey, please be interested in me and watch this content and tell me what you think, and this will motivate me to continue working on my game.
For sure. Yeah, I think, well, you've only been doing the YouTube thing for about a year, but was it 2 years you've been working on Stolen Hearts?
Yeah. It's, 2 years for working on Stolen Hearts, and then, I pretty much started about almost exactly a year ago, I would say. But then really, like, this year was the year I was like, I'm going to go all in on this for YouTube. Started showing my face, started putting more time into making content. Actually got like a video editor and all these, software. I don't have someone to make me videos. But yeah, during that year was also, I was learning about Unity. Like there was most of that stuff that I made for that first year is just not in the game anymore because I've just had to redo it so many times. But it was like getting familiar with the software, and then just being introduced. And like during that time where I was like learning, I was like going on YouTube to learn about Unity and certain features that they have and things like that. And that's where I was introduced to other people's channels. It's like, oh, there's a whole community here, and I can be involved in this, and this is also a way that I can get people interested in my own game. But it's difficult, very difficult. You have put in so many hours to make these videos, and it's like it's very slow YouTube growth.
Would you rather have not joined YouTube and just been concentrating on your game, or are you enjoying being on YouTube?
Yeah. I mean, one of the benefits I didn't really expect at all was to actually kind of, meet people, and really become, friendly with people, yourself included, and a number of other people that I've gotten to, talk to, and even in some cases, like, work on projects with. So that's been really fun. And it's also really cool that now there are people that are interested in the things that I'm doing. So I'm definitely glad I do it. And it's also fun just by itself. I feel like being expressive and making this type of content is still fun. And I think a lot of people that make games also feel like that because I've heard Tawhid talk about this and other people talk about how, it scratches a similar itch, right? Like you're making things that people enjoy, right? It's like you're making entertainment in both situations.
You could think of it as like, your devlogs like the starter, and then your game's like the main course, or dessert. Should have gone for dessert.
Yeah, but actually, it's funny because devlogs I find are the hardest to get people to watch of mine. Like when I make other types of content, um, people are more likely to comment if I'm doing like, oh, I'm doing a 1 hour challenge, or even this, like the podcast. Like, people really like to listen to this. I think because a lot of people are going through a similar situation, and it's kind of if they find that the people I talk to are relatable, right? So it makes it interesting for them. But it's like, I'm glad that you enjoy this, but also go look at my devlogs.
Go look at the devlogs, guys.
But yeah, how do you feel about like the type of content that you make and like getting the views, and which ones, what type of content like gets the most traction for you?
To be honest, the majority of my videos over the last year have been devlogs. I've not had many that aren't. I did. When was it? It was like October. I tried to make a video about my previous game jam experience and using Unity, and I sort of showed off the games I made in Global Game Jam 2015 and 2016, and that video is sitting on 25 views. So it's not great, but again, that was September, so I don't think many people were really watching even my devlogs back then. The devlogs near it are getting sort of 40, 50 views. So I think devlogs are the way to go for me.
Yeah, and you had a good like system. I mean, like you were able to churn a lot of them out like as you. It was like you really could see the progress as you go, right? It was like very steady. Whereas like, I have like a lot of things that I made over the past 2 years, and I just don't know what to say, like to show sometimes. So it's like, okay, this video is going to be about this, and then I just like shove a bunch of features and like levels together. I'm like, okay, here, look what I did. Whereas like you really, it was like taking people on this journey of you creating this project.
I'm glad you said that, because when I made the devlogs, I really tried to sort of bring you on the development that I experienced. And if that's how it came across, then that is excellent to hear.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly how it came across.
It's a lot of work though, and there's a reason I haven't really uploaded for over a month, and it's because there's so much effort that goes into that. And if you're trying to do game dev, I mean, this is something you'll understand. If you try and do game dev and then you try and make a devlog, I think that probably I would spend twice the amount of time on the devlog as in a week than on game development itself, which is just crazy. It was basically a whole part-time job.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, between game dev and making the YouTube videos, it's more than like, yeah, it could be, tons and tons of hours a week, and like take up like the entire weekend. So what was your like process like during Project Torrim to say, okay, I'm gonna make a devlog scheduled? I mean, you ended up, how many devlogs did you end up with at the end after that year? It was like almost once a week, right?
Yeah, it was pretty much once a week. So it was 47, but then I did like a what's next video. So I guess 48. I think that's in my files. It's called devlog 48. Yeah. So my current path of dev, I started in October 2019. So I started doing a bit of game engine, and I made like a Flappy Bird clone. But I struggled to. So that was a Halloween themed game. I should probably try and release it in Halloween because it was pretty fun. And then I tried to do a Christmas game, but I just struggled to find the time to do it. So around February, I thought I'm going to get up early in the morning to get dev done before I go to work, because at the end of the day, I just want to relax. I don't want to do game dev after a whole day of development. So since last February, I've been getting up at like 6 a.m. I get about an hour or two in, and that's my work flow.
Yeah, I mean that's the right way to do it. I think just chip away at it until slowly produce the content, and it takes a lot, right? And it takes, like you were saying, twice the amount of time for the devlog as it is for the development, especially when what you're developing is not very interesting, right? Like I'm like, oh, I've been working on this one feature for the past week, and I could show it in about 5 seconds, but it took, 15 hours to make, to tweak and actually get it to a point where I'm happy with it. But how do I do that in an entertaining way? And sometimes it's just like not possible. So I'm just like, okay, I guess I'm just not gonna talk about this. But then it's like, oh, do they think that I'm not working on this? Or more likely, do they care? And the answer is no, right? They just want to see the entertaining stuff. I find, for at least my content. But it's but I have like different type of thing, because you have yours was much more of a journey, right? And it was and I think that people that were watching your stuff are probably more interested in this technology because you're making your own engine, right? And so the challenges of that probably appeal to the people that are interested in very techy types of content.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's both an advantage and a disadvantage to be doing a game engine devlog series. And I don't feel that I put much emphasis on the game engine itself. I talk about what features I've added to the game, and then maybe I'll touch upon the game engine. There's a few weeks where I did a lot of game engine stuff, like when I completely did a bunch of performance changes to the collision system. And part of me, I was kind of worried about putting that out because I thought, oh, everyone's going to get bored and they'll switch off. But I did get quite a lot of people that wanted to help out with the performance issues, which was super cool.
Yeah, that is, that's like classic. Like, no, you don't think about performance usually for some of the other engines, right? So it's like that's definitely a cool problem to have, right? Because a lot of people have the same problems as everybody else, right? When you do Unity, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this wasn't behaving how I expected, so I looked it up, and Bracky's told me the answer. Great story. But you're having you have to solve these things on the fly, and kind of people can take that adventure with you.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. If you want to make a game, pick up an engine that people are using. But if you want to have, if you're interested in any engine development, then go for it. And people will help you and care. Like I did a video about my collision engine performance, and I thought that was quite well explained. And then all of a sudden people were telling me, use quad trees. And I was like, okay, let's give that a go. And it was just super cool to make a quad tree. Learning what they are. It took a little bit of time, but once I got my head around it and implemented it, I thought it was the coolest thing.
Yeah, I remember that because your all the characters were like glitching as they went after you switched it, right? The collision system.
Yeah.
So
it was so bad.
Yeah. So what is your favorite part of making games and engines and just like indie dev life in general? And then like, what's the worst part?
I really like seeing something you have designed come to life. When you've got a still picture of a sprite and you've got this idea of it'll run around and animate and maybe it'll fly across the screen, and when you actually get that working fully, that's such a treat. But also, that's probably more games. With engines, it's just seeing a neat feature come together to make an improvement to not just one feature you're working on, but the whole game and multiple games if you've got multiple games running off that engine.
Yeah. And the worst part?
It's making the engine.
Do you find that it's like a big hindrance on your personal life and like kind of burdensome at all?
I think getting up in the morning helped with that. I try. It was a little bit, but luckily lockdown was there to make sure I had no personal life anyway.
Yeah, another. So I think everybody I talk to has said that it's because of the pandemic that they started really getting into it.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing some smaller things beforehand. I think it was the YouTube, like getting into YouTube lockdown helped me with, because then I had the time to actually make the videos. And now I'm sort of just trying to make videos that I think are fun, and hopefully are kind of related to my previous videos, having a journey of development, but maybe it'll be a slightly longer video, like BW Dev, DevDuck, Thin Matrix.
Nice. Are those your favorite indie dev YouTubers?
Those three were the ones that got me into it for sure. Because I watched one of their videos came up, and I watched that, and I watched the other two channels, and I thought I should be doing that with my game. So pretty much that week, I recorded everything I did, and I sat down on the weekend, and I made my first devlog.
So how long before you started making devlogs were you kind of in this sphere of indie devs, right? Because you're in a lot of discords, you're in a lot of like seeing people and other YouTubers, you're in the comments and a lot of people, right? Like you've collaborated with a bunch of people. So how long before you actually started making content were you already kind of dipping your toes in?
Well, in the game dev scene on YouTube?
Yeah.
I think it was after I started making devlogs. I was making devlogs, and I got comments from Neat Games, and I was
Me
like,
too. That was my first one too.
"Who's this
Neat
guy?"
Games. He listens to he listened to the last podcast at least.
Hi,
Neat
Neat.
Games, we're gonna get you on here.
You've got to get him on here.
I know. We're trying to work it.
He was commenting, and I started watching his channel. I was like, "Oh, there's another guy that does devlogs. Cool." And then I started looking at the people that were commenting on his videos. So I think that probably included someone like yourself. I think Casual Dutchman, or Huntston Studios as he goes by, was in there. Possibly Games by Soul. So loads of people were in there, and I just started looking at everyone, and I just branched out from there, watching a lot of devlogs.
Yeah, watching devlogs is very fun for a number of reasons. It's like very fun because you want to obviously see what other people are making, right? And a lot of people, like, you see a lot of similarities in what people make, and then also a lot of differences of like their intentions, right? Right, like your intentions for your devlogs were different than like things that other people make, and everyone has their own style, right? And it's a lot of fun, definitely a lot of fun, and it's also a great learning experience, I think. Just to watch other people make their games, because you could, everyone has the same problems, honestly.
That's very true. Yeah, even if you're a Unity dev or an Unreal dev, you're gonna have some similar problems. Domain specific stuff, yeah, okay, go watch a tutorial. But like getting in the mindset of having to do the work and getting in the mindset of creating game logic, that's all the same.
Yeah, and plus everyone is dealing with this also the problem of committing and finishing games, right? Because everybody's game is way too big for one person, and yet there are people that do it, and you have to be someone that also does it if you want to complete your game. So I think that's where a lot of the people's pains is, like, either people that aren't technologically experienced trying to understand it. That's like one of the big buckets of problems that people have, and then the other is like, motivation to get it done.
For sure, it's so hard to finish a project, and that was something with Project Torrim. I said to myself, like, I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna make sure it's done, because I didn't want to leave the series half done and people saying, what happened to this? I kind of have had that in the past. Maybe it's a story for a different time. Definitely want to do a video on this, but I mentioned earlier I had a 3D animation tool for Game Maker, and maybe a year ago I logged onto the YouTube channel for that, and there was comments on there like, well, what happened to this? Oh my goodness, what's going on? And I just felt so bad.
Yeah, I have nightmares that that's what's going to happen to my project. But I'm not going to let it happen, because you're going to wish list it on. All right, I'm talking to you, the viewer at home. Cool. All right, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I think we're just about an hour right now, so that's a good amount of time to call it. But
sure, don't worry.
Go subscribe to Lewis Skeffles on his channel. Any other thing to promote? Twitter, Discord, anything else?
I'm not on Twitter. I am on Discord, but I don't have my own server. So you'll see me in all the other game dev Discords. I might not be active in some of them, but I will definitely be active in the smaller ones I can keep up with. If I see messages, I will try and respond. And you should wishlist Stolen Hearts.
and download Project Torrim. All right, link to that in the description. I'm going to download Project Torrim, all right? And then I'm going to tell you all about it. And it's going to be great. But I already know all about it because I've watched the devlogs. All right. Cool. Thanks for being on the show.
This was fun.
Yeah. See you next time.